Hey there, I'm Matt, but you may know me as the Tattoo Robot. It's February, so for this traditional tattoo style art tutorial, we're drawing hearts. Why? Because Valentine's Day, of course. But instead of wasting money on flowers that'll be dead in a few days, give your significant other something that lasts forever. Art! And just to stay on theme, I'll be adding flowers to these pieces, but at least these won't wilt. This is the first of 3 videos, all using the same heart as a base. Next up, Neo-Traditional, after that, Nu Skool. And yeah, I know I said birds were going to be the next set of tutorials, but I forgot about Valentine's Day. So, we're shifting gears, and birds will be ready next. Don't worry. Starting with the heart. Simple, bold, symmetrical. Like true love, it's gotta have a solid foundation. American Traditional is all about strong, readable shapes, so no unnecessary frills here. Since this is a Valentine's piece, I'm adding 2 flowers to frame the heart because nothing says romance like something that's gonna die soon. For these, I'm taking a similar approach to the ones that I did for the traditional cocktail tutorial. I start with a circle, then add 2 more circles around it. If you're using a digital program like Procreate, you can just duplicate and resize these. If you're on paper, grab a compass or freehand it. Flowers don't grow perfectly in nature, so they don't have to be exact. Next, I sketch in some lines through the center to find the middle of the flower and then add 2 more smaller circles to define the center details. Now let's refine the petals. These aren't a specific type of flower, so shape them however you like. I like to add extra little curves to the edges to keep things interesting, but not so much that it looks messy. That looks good. Now I'll duplicate it and position it where it balances out the composition. I always design artwork as if it's going to be a tattoo, so I keep things taller than they are wide since arms and legs are the best places to put tattoos that people will actually see. But if you want to make your drawing wider, go for it. Want to add more flowers? Add them. Go ahead. If you're working digitally, save some time by keeping the flowers on a separate layer. Color one, then duplicate it as many times as you want to fill that space. Alright, I'm happy with how this looks, so now I'll move on to the leaves. I'll be using a limited color palette, so you'll see me tweak the shape of these leaves a few times before I finally settle on something that works. American Traditional is all about bold, confident lines. No weak, scratchy strokes, just clean, solid outlines to make the design stand out. This step locks everything into place and really brings the piece to life. But since everybody knows how to do outlines already, we're just going to speed through this part. Before I add any shading, I fill each section with the color I think looks best. I'm keeping the palette simple. 2 reds, 1 classic, 1 pink, and 2 grays, about 30 and 60%. I color fill the heart with red, obviously. The flowers were originally going to be red too, but I didn't like having the same tone touching, so I switched them up. I encourage you to experiment and see what works for you. The point of these tutorials isn't to show you one perfect way. It's about having you develop your own style and help you learn to troubleshoot to make your artwork look even better. Now it's time to add some shading to make this artwork really pop. For some areas, like the flowers, I prefer to start shading dark from the center. In this case, I added a touch of red since the flowers were looking a bit flat. For some areas, like the heart and leaves, I begin black at the bottom and work my way up, creating a smooth gradient. I'm careful to keep the dark areas from touching, as this can easily overpower the design. This method ensures the gradient stays smooth, the outlines stay sharp, and the overall piece stays well defined. And there it is, an American Traditional heart and flowers built to last longer than any Valentine's bouquet. Strong shapes, bold contrast, and just the right amount of detail. Next time, we'll take the same design and give it the neo-traditional twist. After that, Nu Skool, and then birds. I promise, the birds are coming. Valentine's Day is coming quick, and you're thinking, crap, what do I get for that significant other of mine? Well, you could go with chocolates, but they'll be gone in a day. Flowers, dead in a week. A gas station teddy bear? Really? Here's an idea. Make them something. Art lasts forever, and today I'm showing you how to draw a neo-traditional heart, a gift more meaningful than some overpriced junk off a store shelf. Even if you're just learning, I'll break it down step by step so you can follow along. Oh, and if you're single, just draw it for yourself. Self-love, baby! Let's get started. Hearts are pretty easy to draw, so I'm not going to walk you through the initial step. Just make sure it's symmetrical. I'm sketching next to the traditional heart that I did in the last video, so my space is a little bit limited. If you have a different shape to work within, go ahead and do what feels right to you. You're the artist, I'm just here as a guide. I hope you like drawing circles because we're about to make a lot of them. If you're working digitally, this process is pretty simple. Draw a circle, drop it in place. Duplicate, move, duplicate, move, duplicate, move. You get the idea. Once at the top, I need to make sure the circles are touching, so I adjust them, making sure not to stray too far from my original shape. That looks pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and smash all those fuckers together into a single layer, duplicate, flip, and move into place. And just like that, our sketch is done. Now let's do the outline. Just kidding. Let's make more circles. Bam, 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 bam. Circle, 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 another circle. And guess what's next? Another fucking circle. I could do this all day. But wait, here's a wrench to throw in the gears. A square. Just kidding, more circles. Whew, that was rough, but we made it through. But wait, what's this? Oh no, more circles. Hold on to your butts, here we go. Bam, 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 bam. Still with me? All right, take a moment, catch your breath. Now let's make those one layer, flip, and excellent. Everything is in place. I'm gonna add a rose to this artwork because this thing isn't busy enough. That's a joke. I have space to fill, and damn it, I'm going to fill it. You could easily skip the rows and go straight to your line work. This heart will look awesome on its own. Or you can get creative and add something else. If you're drawing a nice piece of artwork for your significant other, maybe add something that's specific to your relationship. Where was your first date? What is a song you both enjoy? A common interest? An inside joke? Get inspired and add something that represents your relationship. Or you can be boring and draw a rose like I am. If that's what you choose to do, I'm not going to show you how to draw one today because I already did a tutorial on that, and you'll have to click the link in the description to go find it. I'm drawing my leaves to sort of hug the artwork from the traditional heart tutorial. If you're copying me line for line, this would be a good place to not do that. Adding some extra leaves would be a good way to make this artwork fill a larger area. Now it's time for the outline. You know what would be fun right about now? About 1,000 circles. Let's go! I'm using 3 different line weights here. I like when the outer line work is extra thick, but it's not necessary. A normal thickness for everything else, and then a thin line for finer details. This doesn't have many small lines, but in neo-traditional artwork, it's somewhat common for an artist to outline where their highlights are going to be, or sometimes where they're going to shift colors instead of blending. Whatever you may choose, it's up to you, but I enjoy a nice clean gradient. Next, I'm going to select different areas for specific hues. I'm restricting myself to gray and red again, but I'm going to add a little more variety. So today I'm using 4 reds, 4 grays, plus pure black and white. I'm making my heart black using a dark, almost charcoal gray as the base. Shading is relatively easy. For the rose, I'm adding slightly darker reds to each isolated section, brushing out from the center where a little depth can be beneficial. The pearls, or beads, whatever you want to call them, get a little swish of darker gray along the bottom. This will make them appear slightly round. Notice how I've used a light gray for the base of the big beads? This allows for a bright white highlight. I'm adding a random additional highlight or two to some, just to add a little variety. Then right against the lower edge, I add a swish of white. This is something I like to do for Nu Skool and Realism, as it simulates an indirect light source, and looks super cool when adding a nice complementary color to whatever the hero object is. But this isn't Nu Skool or Realism, so just a little bit of white will do the trick. Here's where things get a little tricky, but just know that when I'm using a different shade of gray, black, or white, I'm using a new layer. For this heart, I was thinking jewelry, a black glass heart contrasted against white pearls. With that in mind, I add a little depth by creating a heavy black gradient coming from the top, a little splash of gray at the bottom, and then I cover it in white. This white is the inner reflection, and I use my eraser tool to turn it into a transparent gradient. Would this gradient be sharp and clean like this in the real world? Probably not, but it looks fucking cool, and looking cool is more important than reality. Take your profile picture, for example. Oh, sick burn, right? There's a thumbs down button if that hurt your feelings. Moving on. Next, I added some chunky highlights on the outside of the glass. I didn't really have a plan for these, so I just reshaped them until I thought they looked fun and interesting. A nice triangular shape that mimics the outer edge of the heart will do the trick just as well. Using my eraser tool again, I turn these highlights into a transparent gradient. Let's add some finishing touches here in the form of some shadowing. That's it, a neo-traditional heart that's almost guaranteed to make your significant other's heart melt. The heart wants what the heart wants, and what the heart wants is heart art. Matt the Tattoo Robot, thanks for giving this tutorial a try. If the neo-traditional heart was a bit much for you, no worries. Check out the traditional heart tutorial or something a little easier to follow. And if you're up for the challenge, join me next week for the Nu Skool Heart. Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Matt, but you may know me as the Tattoo Robot. Welcome to the third and final installment of my heart tutorial series. Valentine's Day is over, and this one's for all of you out there that are done with love. Let's create something a little darker. Before we dive in, let's talk a little bit about Nu Skool tattooing. It evolved from American traditional, but takes everything to the extreme. Bigger expressions, exaggerated forms, and a more dynamic sense of movement. It pulls inspiration from cartoons, graffiti, and pop culture, making it more playful and energetic. Bold lines and strong compositions are still important, but Nu Skool breaks the rigid rules of traditional tattooing, allowing for more creativity and personality. Alright, time to sketch. Since this is the final heart in the series, I'm using the same base heart that I used for the other tutorials. But this time, I'm using the warp tool in Procreate to bend it into more of a C shape. The dagger will follow the same type of curve, giving the overall design some nice flow. Next, I split the heart into quadrants to make it easier to center the eye since this piece is slightly turned. I didn't plan this one out ahead of time, I just kind of let it develop. I added the eye to keep the heart from looking too boring, but once the dagger arrived, the eye looked a little too alive. So I rolled it back and made it look a bit more, well, dead. I didn't want to get too crazy with the dagger, so once I knew where the line of action would be, I kept it simple. The line of action is basically a guiding curve that helps create flow and movement in the design. In this case, it follows the same C shape as the heart to keep it unified. From there, I made the dagger a double-edged blade with a basic garden handle. I wrapped the handle in leather, and to make it feel thick and realistic, I added a little extra material wherever it overlapped. This gives it more dimension and makes the wrap look more intentional. Once the sketch is done, I move on to the line work. I use varying line weights to create depth and guide the viewer's eye. I kept the lines around the heart thicker to make it the focal point, drawing attention to it first. Thinner lines help define details like the dagger and the eye without overpowering the main shape. This balance keeps the design readable even at a distance. Got any ideas for future tutorials? Drop them in the comments. I'm always looking for something new to do, and I'm thinking maybe I'll do eyes at some point, how to make them pop, different shapes and expressions. Another idea is all-seeing eyes. They're a classic design and always sell well on a flash page. Let me know what you'd like to see next. Now for the color. Since I'm only using reds and grays, I have to be intentional with how I balance them. I start by dragging and dropping the base colors, and then I build up the shading. I like to darken the edges to push the lighting effect to make the heart feel more three-dimensional. I'm also going to add a pink edge glow to make the heart feel like there's a secondary light source from behind. Highlights can really make a design pop. For this piece, I went with some chunky highlights, but to keep things interesting, I split them with a boomerang shape. I wanted all the raised shiny areas to reflect the same light source, so I kept that consistent boomerang shape throughout all the highlights. For the dagger, I wanted the dark metal of the handguard and pommel to look metallic, with some subtle shifts in darkness. I went a little overboard at first, and had to pull back to keep it balanced. Detail is great, but adding too much to a small area can make the design feel inconsistent. I kept that in mind when coloring the blade, giving it just enough reflection to make it feel like brushed metal, but not turning it into a mirror. Finding that balance can be tricky, which is why working in layers or having a reference is key. For the handle, here's where I cheated a little. I wanted that leather-wrapped look, but I didn't want to spend a ton of time on texture, so I used the aged skin brush that's built into Procreate to add those finer details. Was it necessary? Not really. This piece would have looked great without it, but I decided to add it for a little bit of extra depth. I also added a little shadowing to make the leather pop, but for the highlights, I didn't want to make them look too shiny, so I placed them under the skin texture layer to keep them subtle. And that's all 3. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial series. I think this is going to be my last one for a little while. So yeah, stay tuned if you want to see some of my actual art. But for right now, I can't do any more tattoo related stuff because I'm trying to concentrate on 3D and this isn't really doing anything for me. So yeah, I'll catch you on the next one. All right, thanks. Bye.